This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Welcome in. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown, the April 2023 edition. And I am Eric Balkman from the FFPC, the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Better Sports Network High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and of course here, the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. I invite you to follow me and connect with me on Twitter at Eric Balkman. I want to remind everybody before we get into tonight's guest, we do have some exciting things going on at the FFPC right now. Thank you for making the FFPC Never Too Early Superflex tournament a success. That is sold out. However, we do have some action going on in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball tournament. Just $125 to enter that, and you can win $25,000 in that. So you can sign up for that. We have drafts going on 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks. Those will stop. Those drafts will stop in 23 days. When the NFL draft starts, these drafts stop. It's all pre-NFL. So if you want a pre-NFL draft, so if you want to get in on that and have like that balanced playing field from like January to April, this is the tournament for you. Drafts are also available in the Fantasy Pros, the inaugural Fantasy Pros Championship. Just $350 to enter that, and you can win $1 million at myffpc.com. First time we've ever had a $1 million grand prize in the 350 contest. It's happening this year. You can also, while you're there, and this is what we're going to get into. By the way, with the Fantasy Pros Early Bird is live right now. So you register before June 1st and then draft before June 15th. You're going to get a free $35 FFPC team credit, and you can do that up to 3 times. So you'll get 3 FFPC $35 credits there as well. So take advantage of that. The crux of the program tonight, and the majority of the conversation is going to be about Dynasty Fantasy Football. 2 ways to play Dynasty Fantasy Football at myffpc.com right now. 1, you can adopt an orphan team. Discounted teams, reduced price teams are available right now. The leagues start at $77 all the way up to $2,500. Just go to myffpc.com, pick whatever one you want. I mean, I think there's some still on there for $1, which is crazy that you can get a dynasty team for $1 and manage it to greatness. You never know what could happen. That's one way. And then I want to say about last Thursday, we launched $100 startups. The 77 dynasty leagues are now $100 leagues. And the reason for that is it's just a little bit easier and less complicated. A lot of people are getting confused on, not having to pay, getting the team essentially for free year one, but paying for a year in advance. We kind of erased that. The $100 startup leagues for dynasty at myffpc.com. When you sign up for those have the same exact deposit rules as all the other dynasty leagues right now. So make sure you're doing that at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, comment on it, share, and get notified every time we go live. I know we'll be live this Thursday. Aiden LaCour and Dave Terpoli are going to be covering a live Never Too Early Best Ball Draft on YouTube and Twitter. I'll be on Facebook, and then my personal Twitch with the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show with JJ Zachariason. That is Thursday. We go live with JJ and me. It'll be at 7/6 Central. And then those guys, I believe, go live at 8/7 Central. So there you go. A huge night of FFPC Fantasy Football on Thursday. But we have a huge night of FFPC Fantasy Football right now. I want to bring back onto the show a player who's won 10 high-stakes FFPC Dynasty Leagues in his career, including cashing in 10 of his leagues in 2022 alone. You've seen him on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. You've seen him on the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. He's back on the show this week. It's my fellow Wisconsinite, Tim Gilbertson. Tim, what's up, man?
Not too much. How you doing, Balky?
Doing great. Excited to have you on. Excited to talk a little Dynasty Fantasy Football. We're going to talk about what to do with running backs like Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley. We're going to talk a little Cole Kmet, Pat Freiermuth as well. And then we're also going to talk about some of Tim's rookies that he likes, some of them that he's fading, or at least he expects to as of right now when these rookies don't have teams yet, which they will in the NFL draft coming up in about 3.5 weeks. So let's get into it right away, Tim, and we'll jump in head first and talk with you about this. You have a lot of shares of Alvin Kamara in your FFPC Dynasty Leagues right now. I'm just kind of curious, what's your approach been with him? Have you been shopping him around knowing that there could be an upcoming suspension, knowing you're probably not going to get full value for him? What's the type of deal that you would take back in exchange for Alvin Kamara at this point?
Yeah, I definitely do have a good amount of shares of Kamara, and I have been shopping them, to be honest with you. And, armchair quarterback, probably the time to cut bait on him might have been when Drew Brees retired. But, he was such a point machine at that point, I didn't have it in me to let him go. And with shopping him right now, I'm not really getting many takers for like that late first range, and that suspension looming, it has everybody a little bit scared, nervous. So right now, I would say if you could cut bait, if you had someone willing to give you a late first, I'm probably cashing out at that point and turning that into a younger, probably up and coming running back, taking a swing and taking a chance right there. Maybe even 2 seconds does it for me, but there's not a lot of offers getting thrown in at that range. So right now, I'm being a little bullish myself personally. I'm just gonna try to ride out this suspension, see if Derek Carr, coming back there, getting some stable play at quarterback, we might get a little more of that PPR nightmare coming again with him when he does come back, and then maybe a trade deadline candidate at that point once the wheels start moving and turning a little bit maybe. And that might be your next best window to try to get a decent haul for him to cash out. So
I think it's interesting too because your best bet is probably shipping him to a contender, a team that wants to win the championship this year, right? And those contenders typically have the 10 pick or the 11 pick or the 12 pick. Like it's a marriage made in heaven, right? So I think that's the right move. In one of my dynasty leagues, and this is a little off topic, but in one of my dynasty leagues, I'm in a private dynasty league, and one of the other competitors is Dave the Dizzle Gerzak, FFPC co-founder. And he sent me a couple of offers for Rachaad White, and I have Rachaad White in a couple of leagues. And I thought they were fair. I didn't know what I was going to do on it. But then on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on BSN last week, Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros was on. He's obviously a dynasty expert. And he went up and down saying, I don't like Nick Chubb this year. I don't like Nick Chubb at all. Nick Chubb, you got to sell. And I said, well, let me ask you this. Dizzle's offering me Nick Chubb in the 210 for Rachaad White in the 206. So I should decline that, right? And he's like, actually, I would accept that. So I gets to ripping Nick Chubb, and then I did the deal, Tim. I want your thoughts on that. Which side would you rather have? I feel like in this league, I have the Brian Gutekunst, Ted Thompson, Green Bay Packers philosophy to dynasty, maybe Milwaukee Brewers as well, where you do just enough not to get it done. And I feel like I've always been one player away. Well, now maybe Nick Chubb helps me get it done this year in this league. But your thoughts on Rachaad White in the 206 in exchange for Nick Chubb in the 210?
To be honest with you, especially if you're in the middle of the road, maybe not even a full-on contender, I think I'm going to lean with the Nick Chubb side because I think he could have another season or two where he does balance that sway of power, especially with Deshaun Watson coming back, maybe knocking some of that rust off. And the Rachaad White side of things, that Tampa situation could be a lot of volume, a lot of opportunity, but what's that offense really going to be like? Are they going to be near that goal line a lot? Where Nick Chubb, we know Cleveland's probably going to feed him that rock down inside the 10 and get a lot of scoring chances. So I think I'm dropping down to the 210 and grabbing Chubb with the upgrade there, even though he is a little bit older than White, a little more proven though.
Yeah, Derek did not like Rachaad White, and Rachaad White does have some bullets to dodge in the NFL draft coming up as well. Yep. And we know that even if Cleveland drafts somebody, unless it's like Bijan Robinson or something, Nick Chubb's role is pretty safe, at least for 2022 for sure. Saquon Barkley, I don't think he's in the same pool as Alvin Kamara because he's younger than him. He definitely has more of a workload than Alvin Kamara has had the last couple of years. But now that the Giants have re-upped with him, right? Is this the time to cash in on Saquon Barkley coming off this big season and knowing that the shelf life for running backs in the NFL is not usually a long one? You have Barkley on a few of your teams. What do you do with him? Stand pat and enjoy the ride, or see what you could get for him at this point?
Yeah, I really think I think kind of going back to question one with Kamara, I'm kind of learning through my Kamara experience with Barkley a little bit. We've had so much injury history with Barkley. I was able to grab some shares with him a little more on the cheap when people were a little bit frustrated, kind of just wanting to cash out. And now I think might be the time you go get those chips back, because we finally had a really healthy season. He's got his offense churning. Daniel Jones is looking a little better. The new head coach has things in motion over there. But now this year again, what if he gets hurt again? And now he misses a season. Now that age really starts coming up into that spot where you're not going to get too much back. So I'm starting to actively look at deals for him. I think he might be another one, especially if he catches fire for maybe 4 weeks to start the season. You could really cash in well as at that point. But I think it'll be a year too early. But you do have that. Where is he going to go next year? What's that contract situation going to be like? Is he going to get a nice fat 4-year deal next year? But it's really 2-year deal somewhere, right, and they can get out after 2. So now you really got that last maybe 2-3 years on him. And at that point, you're grabbing a second, you're grabbing something like that just to get a piece back. So I think if you really want to haul, I think now might be the time to do it on Saquon, unfortunately. Because I do think he's going to have a good year this year, though.
Right. 2 tight ends that are going, I don't know. I mean, they're probably, it's tough for like Dynasty because everybody values different players differently, right? But I feel like Cole Kmet and Pat Freiermuth are probably in the same bucket, right? For fantasy value in Dynasty leagues. Between Kmet and between Freiermuth, if you could only have one of these guys, like let's say you have Freiermuth, some guy offers you Kmet, or you have Kmet and some guy offers you Freiermuth, which side would you rather have between those 2 up-and-coming tight ends on 2 offenses that I think aren't necessarily all that exciting, but could take big steps forward this coming year?
Yeah, this is a really good question, because I actually really like both players a lot. And like if you just took in a vacuum for value-wise right now, I'd probably take Freiermuth because I could spin him for better pick back, things like that at the moment. But player for player, I'm going to go with Cole Kmet on this, just based on Justin Fields. We saw some things ending last year. Kenny Pickett does still have some upside too, but I think Fields has a little bit more higher ceiling, if you will, with his offense. And I do really like, a lot of people are kind of stubborn on the DJ Moore, the new additions being brought into Chicago. I think it's actually going to help Kmet, because losing Mooney last year, Fields was doing a lot with the legs. Kmet was maybe option 1 in the passing game for most of that year. So I think we get some field stretchers in there for Kmet, with that athleticism, quarterback that's on the rise. I do think the ceiling, in my opinion, is a little higher for Kmet. But I think the floor is probably a little safer with Freiermuth. Pittsburgh likes to get that tight end involved. Pickett seemed to like Freiermuth last year. So both great assets, both great options. But I think I'm going to go for the home run a little bit. I think Kmet's still got a little bit of that, not calling him Travis Kelce, but I think he's got a little bit of that upside juice that hasn't been fully tapped yet.
Do you find yourself, I know like in national contests like the FFPC Main Event or the FantasyPros Championship, Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, a lot of people will go for the upside. They'll go for the ceiling players over the steady eddies. But when you're talking about the FFPC, where you're just trying to beat 11 teams in your own Dynasty League, Tim, do you feel like you're still going for those upside players? And this isn't just a Kmet versus Freiermuth question. This is a question just of Dynasty philosophy in general. Are you still going for the guys that could be elite over the more consistent high floor guys?
Yeah, myself personally, Eric, I'm definitely, I swing for the home runs a little more than, especially with the 16, 20-man rosters. I like swinging for a home run. Even, I've had things backfire and miss, but I like having that elite upside rather than, have that roster full of steady eddies, because I think the steady eddies, they're going to get you in the playoffs. They're going to get you a little taste, but I think you need those blue chippers. You need those home run guys that are really going to bring in those titles. So I push a little harder and I dig a little deeper, take some more risks to try to get those home runs.
Let's talk about Jahan Dotson, or is it Jahan Dotson? I always butcher this name. I don't know which way it is. We'll just call him Dotson, from Washington. Last year, he was one of the, less sexy first-round receiver picks, right, in Dynasty leagues. And people were kind of like, when it got to be like that end of the first, we're kind of, early second in some drafts too. Like, we're kind of like, well, I don't necessarily love this guy, but he was a first-round pick in the NFL draft. I can get him pretty late here. Maybe I'll go with him. And I feel like right now, if you have Dotson on your team, who came on at the end of last season, if you have Dotson on your team, he's still a tough sell if you want to get back what should be fair value for him. I almost think like the play not necessarily is to go out and try to get rid of him, but it might be still time to buy on Dotson because I think people are sleeping on his talent for two reasons. One, the quarterback situation in Washington, and two, just the general disarray of that offense in Washington. It didn't seem to matter for Dotson at the end of 2022, and I feel like he's an underrated guy right now, Tim.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Bulky. He's a guy that he just passed the eye test last year when you'd watch him in a game. Carson Wentz really couldn't seem to get any rhythm going, things like that, much like the Washington offense for the last couple of years. But the one consistent was if the ball went to Dotson's direction, he was going up, making a play, making a catch, and especially in the end zone, he was grabbing touchdowns early on before his injury. Then he came back on at the end of the year. And you're 100% right. A lot of people are scared of the offense, the quarterback play. You also have Terry McLaurin still there. And yeah, you're not getting great value. Some are saying last year's class was stronger than this year's rookie class. And it's hard to go find a 111 and 112 and have somebody take that for Dotson,
Mm-hmm.
So I think you may have to wait a year, see how that quarterback play shakes out. Maybe McLaurin moves on. So this year he might not be the home run guy yet, but boy, that his ball plucking ability in his hands, I'm pretty excited about him. I'm trying to grab up shares and keep shares. I was fortunate to get a lot of him at the back end of that first last year, maybe even a 2-1 year there. Had a couple. So I'm excited about him.
Let's okay. So Tim, let me ask you this. I think let's the rookies here. We'll talk rookies. Zach Charbonnet, a little bit polarizing over the last month or so. This was a player that I was kind of excited about, and then I researched it a little bit more, and I was kind of like, God, he stayed for his final year of college. I usually don't like that for my running backs. And then I watched the film, and he looks so electric. He looks so great. Where do you stand on Zach Charbonnet as far as a dynasty rookie draft prospect? I mean, obviously, landing spot goes without saying on all these guys. We don't know where they're going to be. But just from what you know about Charbonnet at UCLA, what are your thoughts on him?
I'm a little bit with you. He's a little nerve-wracking. You don't know, do I want to swing for the fences early on him or, like in my personal opinion, I'd love for more people to be nervous and he falls a little bit for me. So it's less of a reach, so to speak. And then you can reap the rewards if that pans out. But, so some people are, he's got the size, he's got the 4.5 speed, decent vertical. But a lot of people are nervous too, because he had a really great offensive line at UCLA. So his electric runs, was that based on great O-line player? Was that him? Was that to his credit? But he also he's that guy that I was just starting Dynasty kind of when Lev Bell was coming out. And he's got that patience. He's got that bigger body. Maybe he doesn't look crazy explosive, but he's pretty darn explosive. And he's got that steady Eddie to maybe like a James Conner to him as well, to where maybe not the sexiest pick, but if he can do it for 3 downs, getting the right fit on the right offense, could be electric, could be one of those, middle of the road starting running backs, or maybe he falls into being like a Lev Bell where everybody didn't see that coming out of college and, just found a perfect fit for himself. So he could be, and then he also has that feel like, remember when Leonard Fournette was a slam dunk over Christian McCaffrey back in the day? We kind of have that draft going this year with Bijan being just no brainer, 1-1. Does Charbonnet just really shock the world and really come out and be that guy? He's got that. He makes me nervous because if I pass on him, what if he turns into that like we see in spurts on film? And then if you take him early and he's just a so-so blah blah running back, so he is very polarizing, but he's a guy I think I'm gonna be grabbing rather than passing on just for he's got that 3 down back upside. So I think that's where I'm gonna take that swing with him.
I always think too, like, we're not going to talk a whole lot about Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs in this podcast, but Robinson, obviously, wherever he goes, they're going to be using him. I mean, he's a slam dunk, running back, 3-down guy, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is interesting because he is such a talented pass catcher that whoever drafts him, he's going to, at a minimum, he's going to have a pass catching role year one. But after that, you get into the Atlanta Falcons of the world, the Cincinnati Bengals of the world, perhaps the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles of the world. Then all of a sudden you could be looking at if one of these teams jump on a guy like Charbonnet in the second round. Now we have something here, and I think that's what makes this so compelling. We talked about one Zach. Let's talk about the other Zach here from Ole Miss, Zach Evans. This was a guy that, I mean, I go back all the way to like early February, and this is a guy that was going in like the mid, like I look at him as like a 10th or 11th round pick, and now it almost seems like he's gone a little bit higher than that for redraft purposes. For dynasty purposes, I mean, this guy's 6 foot, I think 215, 220, something like that, played in the SEC. I like this player. I think he's a little bit underrated, and this is another guy, right landing spot. You got to love him. But from what you know about him, the raw talent, what you've seen of him, Zach Evans, are you for or against him in dynasty leagues, Tim?
I think this is it's a 1B to Charbonnet a little bit. I'm skeptical on both sides with Evans. I mean, Evans was right there back in the day, kind of actually rated ahead of Bijan at some point, when they were young prospects. So that alone, the talent's there, the athleticism's there. But what makes me nervous is just never really winning a job anywhere. And, like this past year, a true freshman beat him out of considerable playing time. And, just not going to the combine, that makes you a little nervous, even though I don't love falling in love with just combine stats.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder if there's something in the water there. And, and I also think watching some film with him, the vision's a little bit shaky for me. I think he left some runs on the table here or there. So I'm a little more out on Chris Evans than in on him. I think Zach Evans, excuse me. Zach Evans is going to need to fall to me a little bit more than me reaching for him. So he'll be that guy that I'll definitely take with a value pick, but I'm definitely not jumping on him earlier than others may be.
We historically, and we'll do this again this year, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour normally airs Friday nights at 10/9 Central, and we are not going to be doing it this Friday of the NFL draft. We'll do it on Wednesday before the NFL draft starts, because I contend that for dynasty players like you and I, we get more excited about day 2, maybe more so than day 1, because then we usually see where all these running backs end up. Now we'll probably see Robinson go at some point on day 1, but man, day 2, Gibbs, Evans, Charbonnet, like all these guys could be going on day 2, and that's when we really figure out, how high these guys are going to go up in rookie drafts, given what landing spot they end up at, because we'll be able to tell what role they're going to have on that team in year 1. Shifting to the receivers here. At this time, roughly this time last year, LSU's Kayshon Boutte was talked about maybe being the first receiver off the board. I remember watching him play against Florida State in the college football kickoff, and that was still the narrative. Kayshon Boutte. And then he had a so-so final season at LSU, and he is not talked about as the number 1 receiver. In fact, I would say that the top tier of receivers right now, in no particular order, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, and Quentin Johnston, none of those are Kayshon Boutte. So now you look at what we were looking at about Boutte this time last year. Now we see him in sort of a different light coming into this NFL draft. Now, where do you stand on Kayshon Boutte? Is this a guy that just had a bad year and he's a proven talent and you're going to be on board with him? Or is this a player that you don't want to be in business with in the NFL, Tim?
Yeah, Kayshon Boutte's a guy that, I kind of look back. I got a lot of DK Metcalf shares just based on some combine stuff. People didn't think he had a route tree. They didn't like his 3-cone, things like that. And I bet on decaf just based on just the specimen he was, the height and speed, athleticism, just kind of hoping, hey, I'm going to take a stab at this guy falling in the right situation in the NFL. If it pays off, it might be dynamite. I think Boutte's maybe for me just a little bit less of an athletic situation to that, because he is such a good football player. He's coming off some injuries. Everyone was hoping he was going to bounce back this year, kind of put everything together athletically. That didn't happen. But part of me thinks that probably didn't disappear forever. So maybe there's something going on with that injury lingering, or maybe he just was not happy that last year in school, and he gets into the pro system, maybe gets that back, builds up that strength. So I'm not taking him off my board. I think after that first three that you just talked about, we get into a lot of smaller receivers that maybe have some upside. They also have some downside or some variables. I think for me, I'm putting Booty back up into that range after the top three. I think he's going to be in that mix there, depending on how cheap I can get him, and maybe see how some other drafts are evaluating him. But I think I'm still going to take a chance on the football player there, and hope I might strike gold.
And the great thing about it is because his value is depressed. Now, if he gets drafted by Kansas City or something, well, then we have a whole different conversation, right? Yeah. But if he goes to like a home place, I mean, you'd probably agree with this. I mean, you know better than anybody. It's all about acquiring the talent in the dynasty league, in dynasty leagues, and then figuring things out later, right? Because these things have a way of working themselves out. If Booty's talented, even if he goes to a spot where it doesn't seem like it's a great landing spot for him, the talent will win out and he'll get on the field at some point. So especially if he goes to a bad landing spot, a bad situation for him, then his value is really going to be depressed, and then really you can hop all over him. Yeah. Yep. Tight ends. This is a really, really good year for tight ends. And obviously with the FFPC having tight end premium scoring, it's obviously a great opportunity for people to bulk up and get younger at the position. We've heard a ton about Michael Mayer. I've been on Dalton Kincaid, for the last few months. Very excited about him. It seems like everybody's very excited about him. If I take those guys out of the conversation here, Tim, who is your favorite tight end in this class besides those two?
Yeah, it's always exciting in the tight end premium when you have three guys you're really excited about. So the third that I'm excited about is Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. I really like him. I think he's around 6'6", 250 range, 22 years old. I think he clocked his 40 at 4.46 or 4.61, somewhere in that range. And he's a field stretch guy. He's a seam guy. Get up that seam, make some big plays. A lot of the minuses you see on him, everyone talks about his blocking ability, all that kind of good stuff. But he's going to line up wide, and sometimes I almost prefer that tight end that they don't even mess around with blocking. Just get him out. Oh, yeah. Get him out running routes, and don't bang him up, beat him up, all that kind of good stuff. So I really like him, and kind of going through doing some research, I've seen him people have comped him to Hawkinson, Goddard, and he's even got the Kelsey comp a little bit, So he's getting that athletic profile where teams are excited about him. So I'm really on him. I'm hoping he lands in man, I would even love him going to KC, because as great as Kelsey is, he can't be there forever. You get someone like that teamed up with Mahomes, or maybe he lands with Josh Allen, Burrow, who knows? But yeah, I'm really in on him and his athletic ability and that big catch radius. And yeah, the negatives, no inline blocking, I'm good with that. So yeah, I'm ready to roll the dice with him.
He'd be such a good grab for the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love, but Matt LaFleur used the tight end for blocking so much in his offense that I don't necessarily think that they'll draft him there. Although I know they've met with Musgrave, so you never know. Day 2, maybe Musgrave to Green Bay. It's so funny as you're saying that. I'm like, we want the tight ends, our tight ends. We want them to have the ability to block, so they're always on the field. But we don't want them to actually block, because we want them out in pass routes. So we want you to be versatile enough to do it. We just don't want you to actually do it. Just go out there and catch passes, Luke. Quarterbacks, fun year for them too. CJ Stroud. You have Bryce Young. You have Anthony Richardson, who's really been shooting up a lot of draft boards. Will Levis is still out there too. Hendon Hooker is getting some love lately as well. I don't think you play in any super flex leagues. But even you don't have to answer this question. Who's going to be your favorite rookie quarterback out of this class? There's so many different ways we can go with it. Who's your favorite, Tim?
Yeah, so my favorite. So I'm just starting to get my feet wet with the whole tri-flex stuff. So I'm starting to learn, and it's fun. I like it. It's an interesting move because kind of we talked about the home run thing earlier. I think CJ Stroud for myself is maybe the safe play this year, but I don't think there's any lock, just can't miss prospects where it's like, hey, this is our guy. So this year, I'm actually looking at, I think Anthony Richardson's my guy this year. I think who I'm going to target, I want to take in when nobody's really, knocking me off the shelf here with the buy-in price. I kind of want to go swing for the fence, and I'm really intrigued with that upside with Richardson. We've seen the cheat code with the rushing yards and the rushing TDs, and so I think I'm going big, and I'm going to swing for. It's probably not going to show dividends this year. You're going to have to put him on your bench and roll with him for a little bit. But I'm swinging for the fences, and I'm going with Richardson a little bit this year where I can get my hands on him.
I forgot you're in that RotoViz Triflex Superflex Dynasty. And I wonder if this could be the case this year where we have those rookie drafts where Stroud and Young maybe go ahead of Richardson, especially if Richardson goes to like Seattle or something where he's not playing in 2023. But in the single quarterback dynasty rookie leagues, maybe he's the first guy selected there because he probably, and I think most people would say this, he probably has the highest ceiling of any of the quarterbacks there, yourself included. And then maybe like that's the case where like, okay, well, I have the 101, the 102 or whatever in a super flex. I sort of have to take Young or Stroud because I can play these guys right away at the position. But in a single quarterback league, you could probably wait on Richardson because there's not this, you don't have the same impetus to want to start this guy right away. So he actually could go ahead of Young and Stroud in the non-super flex leagues.
I think that's a great point, Balky. I think that would be a very good move. Yeah, you put him on ice for a year, and then all of a sudden it's like getting a new draft pick for free that following year when he's in a starting role, know, and you might have got him for a 2.5, 2.6, something like that in a 1 QB league potentially.
Your final question for tonight, Tim. You've been so gracious with your time. A rookie sleeper that you're excited to draft in your rookie drafts, and I'll apply the HSFF co-host Farrell Elliott logic to this. You cannot mention a player we've already discussed.
Okay.
A dynasty rookie sleeper that you like. And then conversely, a player that we haven't necessarily talked about that you think is either going to be a bust or you don't want to have anything to do with in your rookie drafts as we sit right now here on April 4th, 23 days before the start of the NFL draft.
Yep. So my sleeper that I'm going to try to grab is the running back out of Pitt, Izzy Abanikanda. He's just got that skill set of potentially coming through, for sure probably going to be a day 3 back, but, he might surprise us, sneak into day 2 after the combine he had, and if he gets day 2 capital with his size and speed, and if he clocks anywhere near that 4.3, I mean, that's just, that's some crazy speed there. So, and to go with his size. So, I hope he doesn't get too much hype, so he stays down those draft boards a little bit, and a guy can sneak in there, grab him some shares throughout your drafts on the cheap with him. I'm taking some chances for sure.
I think, and before we get to your bust, so a couple of things about Abanikanda. For the last month or so, when I've asked this question, whether it be analysts or high stakes players like yourself, Abanikanda's name has come up over and over again. I don't even know if he's going to be a sleeper anymore. 9.88 relative athletic score. Now, that was at his pro day. I don't know what he got at the NFL Combine. So that I couldn't tell you. But 9.88 is almost obviously it's out of 10, so it's almost the best you can get. And what makes him so great is he has flashed not only elite athleticism and home run hitting playmaking ability, but he's been able to do everything that was asked of him at Pitt on first, second, and third down, as you alluded to. So all of a sudden, you combine all these. I mean, he's really got the best of the best. And it also wouldn't shock me to see Abanikanda go ahead in the actual NFL draft over somebody like Evans or Charbonnet, because all it takes is one team to be interested. Yeah. And if they have Abanikanda rated higher and they need a running back, then I think there's a lot to like about Abanikanda. So I am totally with you on that one. Who's a guy that you don't like?
Yeah, so on that super flex vibe, I'm gonna go with our guy Will Levis. Levis is just one of those guys. He's in that Richardson camp where there's a lot of athleticism. There's a big arm there. There's some red flags coming out with some of the meetings he had with some NFL GMs didn't sound like he knocked the meetings out of the park or anything like that. So big arm talent, but tough decision making skills. So he could come out and he could Josh Allen us all of a sudden and be dynamite. But just what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing from the community, and just some of the the gameplay I've been watching, it looks a little too erratic for where he's going to go in that 6-7 range and in a super flex rookie. I think I'm going to take, a couple position players before I'm going to take a big swing on a quarterback there. And I will take maybe the safe play and take a nice safe receiver or running back in that spot instead of Levy's at that point in the draft. So I'm going to be out.
It's crazy because like when we started this whole pre-draft process back in, December, January, whenever the NFL season ended, we started looking forward to this coming year. It was like Bryce Young, Stroud, Levis, and Richardson were that was the de facto order. And now it seems like 1 and 2 have flipped and 3 and 4 have flipped, where now it's like Stroud, Young, Richardson, and then Levis. And to your point of what you're saying with Richardson before, he might actually be number 1, but when it's all said and done by Dynasty Rookie ADP, we shall see on that. I know whatever happens, you're going to have a lot of success crushing your rookie drafts because it's just what you do. 10-time FFPC Dynasty League champ. You cashed in 10 out of 17 leagues last year. Is that accurate? I know it's 10. It's 10 out of 17. That's incredible, man.
Thank you.
So grateful we got to pick your brain tonight. And this is probably the worst part of my night. I just realized I'm not following you on Twitter yet. At Tim Gilbertson 5. I'm fixing that right now. Literally following you right now. Absolutely. Because I need, and I think all the viewers and all the listeners need to become better Dynasty players. And what better way than to not only follow you on Twitter, but to listen and watch this podcast back coming up. I will make sure that the word is out on your Twitter account as well. So you get more followers that way. Absolutely. Tim, thanks so much for spending your Tuesday night with me. I appreciate it. And good luck in all your leagues this season. We'll talk with you again real soon, man.
All right. Thank you much, Eric. Appreciate it.
You bet. Tim Gilbertson, ladies and gentlemen, a 10-time FFPC High-Stakes Dynasty League winner, plays in 17 Dynasty Leagues with the FFPC right now, and he cashed in 10 of them last year. An incredible rate. Congratulations to him. And make sure you're following him on Twitter at Tim Gilbertson 5. Ladies and gentlemen, that will complete this month's RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. I want to remind you that we will be back for an NFL draft recap episode of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown coming up the first Tuesday after the draft. So that'll be May 2nd. We will go live on these airwaves again with another talented Dynasty player that's going to give you all the lowdown and the skinny on all the players, where they landed, and how that helps you, how you can maximize the best way to utilize your draft capital in your FFPC rookie draft. So what will start, I think, like a week after that, or roughly a week after that, maybe a week and a half after that. If you're looking for some action right now, win $25,000 in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament right now. It's just a $125 buy-in for that. You have 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour drafts going on. 23 more days of that before that gets cut off at the NFL draft. What does not get cut off by the NFL draft is the FantasyPros Championship. This year, a $1 million grand prize, just $350 to enter. You can register for that at myffpc.com and make sure you're taking advantage of the early bird promo. Draft a team buy the team by June 1st, draft it before June 15th, and you'll get a free $35 FFPC league credit into your account, and you can do that up to 3 times. The main event, once again, awarding a $1 million grand prize, myffpc.com is where to go there for that. And if you want to put this dynasty data that you got from Tim Gilbertson to good use, go to myffpc.com, pick up one of those dynasty orphans. Those reduced prices on those are fantastic right now. You can get in at the $77 level all the way up to the $2,500 level, and a lot of those are reduced priced below that as well. We also have $100 startup leagues going on at myffpc.com. If you want to set sail on a maiden voyage, you can do that right now. Once again, myffpc.com. As a reminder, Thursday night, we will go live on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network on the FFPC's Facebook and the FFPC and my personal Twitch channel. So to have my interview, a 2-hour interview with JJ Zachariason from LateRound.com, and of course the Living the Stream podcast. He will be on there. If you want to check out the FFPC YouTube and Twitter channel Thursday night, we're going to have live best ball coverage for the Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament featuring Aiden LaCory and Dave Terpoli, who will take you through a full draft on that as well. So make sure you're not missing that. Your Thursday night's playing. You got no college basketball anymore, people. This is it. We're in NFL draft mode. We're in fantasy football draft mode, and we're going to have you covered with 2 great shows on Thursday night. Friday night, we'll be back on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on this channel right here, 10-9 Central. Kentucky Fantasy Football State Commissioner, State Championship Commissioner Farrell Elliott, my co-host, and I will be on with multi-league champion in both the FFPC and the KFFSC, Craig Campbell, a guy who is a best ball champion. He will be joining us at 10-9 Central on Friday night. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment, share, and get notified. So every time we are broadcasting here, you're going to know about it, and you can pop in, be a part of the conversation, and ask questions of the best high-stakes players in the world when we have them on these airways. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Be good. Enjoy your Tuesday night, and we will talk with you again on Thursday night. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.